So oftentimes I see these quotes at conferences that 50 billion devices will be online by 2020. And a lot of the conferences also talk about how AI will solve everything, or as long as we keep adding technology, things will improve. How many of your lives do you feel like you have more time because of technology? If the original promise of technology was to give us more time and allow us to be more human, a lot of it's doing the opposite right now. Unless you have a good relationship to technology, in which you use technology as a tool instead of letting it use you, you're probably not having a very good time with it. Probably you'll load something on social media and just get really upset about something that you have no control over, and the next 30 minutes will be miserable for you. So I like to ask the question of, if we did have 50 billion devices online by 2020, would that actually be a good thing? Let's consider the devices that we already have in our lives. We have smartwatches, which in some cases are interesting. I don't wear one of them. They're kind of useful because you can look at them instead of opening the phone in your pocket and getting really upset about the email that you missed. But when we try to put chips into everything, smart chips, that is, there are a lot of companies that really want these things to happen. Because when the phone came out, we had more chips sold in history than ever before. We had 5 billion, 6 billion devices. So all these people were buying chips, and it was really exciting. And so the idea was that we could have an Internet of Things in which everything could be smart. Everything could have a smart chip in it. So I started getting calls from research institutes and design agencies, and they said, we want to make a smart fridge. I said, why do you want me to make a smart fridge? They said, well, we want to have a smart fridge that has a thumbprint reader that keeps you out of the fridge. Why? Well, so that you don't eat the food in the fridge if you've already eaten too much. I said, well, I don't know about you, but I store my sweets in the dumb cupboard, not the smart fridge. What else did you have in mind? Oh, well, we're going to have one with machine vision to tell you when your food has gone bad. So if the bananas have gone bad, you'll be able to know, and it will text you. So okay, so now my phone is going to text me. My fridge will text my phone, which will interrupt me at 3 in the morning, telling me the bananas have gone bad. And the whole fridge takes up more bandwidth than me streaming Game of Thrones on Netflix. And now my internet's slow because it's trying to use machine vision, and it'll get it wrong, obviously, a lot, to tell me bananas have gone bad, when all you have to do is look at the peel, and the banana will tell you whether it's gone bad. Do you really want to keep going with this smart fridge idea? I want to have a dumb fridge. I want to have a mid-century modern fridge. A mid-century modern fridge is really simple because the repair people that repair it, they have repaired it for 40 years. They know what it looks like. They know what the supply chain looks like. When you like something because of the design, you want to keep it around. You want to maintain it. You want to fix it. When you don't like it, you're just going to throw it away. So what happens if the entire world was built in the idea of putting everything smart into everything? You get what I like to call the dystopian kitchen of the future, in which everything speaks a different programming language, everything shouts at you in a different way on your phone, and you're getting these updates from machines and not people. And don't try to get divorced when you have a house full of smart things. There's no way you're going to be able to divvy these up and disable the profiles. Plus, your fridge could spy on you, because every time you open that fridge with machine vision, it's taking your photo. Every time one of these things gets broken, because the company that was funded by venture capitalists goes under, you have a bunch of technology that doesn't work at all. And it's also a security risk. This whole thing can be hacked, and it has been. Everything in your life has already been hacked. There's no security. It's all about thinking about things as an ecosystem. When you get a cold, you don't die. There's antibodies. But when somebody hacks a system, often the entire system goes down. We need to be thinking about how to work with technology and security in a more organic way. There's a connected pet feeder company called petnet.io, and what they had was a very simple setup. They said, look, you don't have to worry about feeding and watering your pets anymore because we will do it for you. It runs on a remote server, so you could even Skype your animals, and you can set feeding times. Now, there was an analog version of this that you just plug into the wall and set a timer on, and it works just fine. Maybe the kibble gets stuck, so the thing shakes itself every once in a while to get the kibble out. But because there were all these people that were so excited about this new piece of technology, they said, ah, great, I love technology, I'm just going to buy it, and I will rely on this new thing that hasn't been tested yet for the well-being of my animal. Can you guess what happened? So the server that provided the updates for the feeding time went down. It wasn't even run by petnet. It was run by a third-party company that petnet hired because they couldn't even build their own servers, and they called themselves a technology company. The pets were stranded. People didn't know whether they were alive or dead. It was the new Schrodinger's cat. And I went on Twitter and watched the fallout. I said, what happened? People were freaking out. Where's my pet? When are the servers going to go up? And you know how companies deal with this, right? They say, oh, we appreciate your patience, and we've talked to our tech support team, which means absolutely nothing. It means that the servers could come back online in a month or two or never be fixed, and they'll just have an automated message telling you, thank you for your time. Thank you for your support in our product. This is a life or death situation. There are animals that could be dead, and this company doesn't care. I said, are they required to provide wellness for your pets? Isn't that what they said on the box or the website? So I look in the terms of service, and it says, you agree not to hold petnet responsible for the well-being of your pet. We do not guarantee 100% uptime. And this is what's happening with everything right now. That we have all this new stuff, nobody's liable for it, and we're okay if Twitter goes down or our email goes down. But if your self-driving car goes down, then it's a really big inconvenience, right? If you go out of that zone, people forget that we already have self-driving cars. They're called trains, they're called the Max line. They're on a route, they work fine. They take cars off the road. When we have self-driving cars, will we have the bandwidth available for the 60 sensors that they require? Will we be able to pay to support the road and the road infrastructure and the wear and tear that these new cars put on the road? We don't think about these things. When we say 50 billion devices could be online by 2020, we forget that every single new device takes up bandwidth. There are no large bandwidth increasing projects in the United States right now. No one is trying to make the web faster or more connected. They're just trying to throw more stuff on it. I like these concepts of time from the Greeks. There's this idea of chronos time, which is the time when you wake up in the morning and you have a meeting from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., and you can only talk about certain things during that meeting. This time was developed for industrial time. It's really important if you're working in food service or you're working in a factory to make the same thing with the same amount of quality again and again and again. But this is not the time in which innovations are made. This is not human time. The time between the bell at school is chronos time, but the time after work, looking at a sunset, looking at a loved one, falling in love, eating food, that's kairos time. The time where you get bored or melancholic because the electricity went out in your house and you're a kid staring out the window at the rain, that's kairos time. The time where Archimedes tried to figure out the density of gold for the king so he could figure out whether the king's crown was made of fake gold or not. He was in chronos time until he decided to give up and take a bath in kairos time. And then he said eureka ran down the street because his body displaced the water and he could understand density. Kairos time is where the innovations are. Kairos time is about understanding who you are, being in communication with yourself, and saying, why are we doing the same thing again and again? Where did we get these ideas about AI to begin with? You know that during the meeting where the phrase AI was invented, there was a toss-up between what it should have been called. It wasn't supposed to be AI. It was supposed to be called augmented intelligence, because that's what technology does for us. It works alongside us instead of on our behalf. We can use the best of technology and the best of what we do. And the best of what we do is in kairos time. Playing, being silly, coming up with new stuff, being an idiot, making mistakes. And when we make mistakes on a chronos time interface like Twitter or Facebook, those mistakes stay with us forever, and everybody is holding each other accountable to this perfection that nobody can live up to. Every time your phone beeps at you, it's probably a machine and not your friend. You could keep it on airplane mode or just turn off those notifications, but every time you do that, you're back into Chronos time. You're back into that super serious time. And it becomes really, really important to think about how your physiological reaction to this works. Lisa Redkelt noticed that when people checked their email, they held their breath. She called it email apnea. Be careful when you just check your email at random because you're hyperventilating. It's really nice to, if you look at your technology as a tool, wake up in the morning and think about what you really want to do. And then make a list. Spend as much time as you can without the tech, and then do something interesting with it. Otherwise, it's not fun. Or if you're going to binge watch something, tell yourself, it's okay, I'm going to binge watch something for 3 hours and I'm going to have a good time instead of feeling guilty about it for those 3 hours. So we have this era of interruptive technology. Our human time is being interrupted all the time. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with the next update for the app is larger than before? How do we deal with battery life issues? How do we deal with bandwidth issues? How do we deal with Facebook arbitrarily dividing us so it can make more money in advertising revenue? We need to have the opposite. We need to remember the original idea of technology was to empower us, to extend our capabilities, to inspire our creativity, like a tool. So we need a calm technology. And what is a calm technology? When I was in college, I was writing my thesis on cell phones. I wanted to write about what people were dealing with in 2007 at the transition from the little candy bar phones to the smartphones. The iPhone had just come out, and I was seeing how people would put their dog on pause as they walked to tap on a glass screen. How cell phones became the new cigarettes, that you would just tap into it if you had nothing else to do. How hard it was to actually pay attention to something because you'd have the compulsion to look at a screen instead. And when I was doing my research, I found these two pranksters, Mark Weiser and John Seely Brown. They were part of a research institute called Xerox PARC. Xerox gave us a lot of printer copy machines. They had a monopoly in this in the 70s. They took their extra money and put it into a general research institute. And they hired some people. They hired Alan Kay, they hired a bunch of these luminaries. But those people hired not technologists to solve technology problems like everybody does now. They hired artists, anthropologists, historians, and engineers. They wanted to represent who people were. And in doing so, these people created Ethernet, which was the predecessor to our Wi-Fi, and they created the graphic user interface so that we could actually point and click on things. And that's where Photoshop and Adobe Acrobat and PDF and all these things came from. There are many more inventions that came out there that we don't even see today. Steve Jobs grabbed the graphic user interface out of Xerox PARC. But these people had this silly time. They were playing. They were being weird about things. They were making stuff that was at human scale for people. And they left behind some of a legacy, but I bet you don't know who these people are at all. So when I found out who they were, I started to dig into their papers and say, what did they come up with that was lost to time that might be really relevant right now? This is a paper they wrote in 1996. They said, The Coming Age of Calm Technology. In the paper, they said that in the past, many people shared one computer. You had a big mainframe computer, you could time share on it, and lots of people would rent time on that computer. At this time, they were writing in the desktop era, where everybody had a desktop computer at home, really one computer to one person, maybe a couple more. They said in the future that many devices will share each of us. And at that point in time, the scarcest resource won't be technology. Technology will be incredibly cheap. At that time, the scarcest resource will be our attention. And how technology makes or breaks our attention will make or break that technology. There's this quote about invisible technologies, in that a good technology is invisible, not that it's actually invisible, but that when you use it, you focus on the task and not the tool. When you're a carpenter and use a hammer, you focus on the nail, you don't focus on the hammer. When you're reading a book, you dissolve into the pages. You're in a simulation. It's an incredibly interesting technology that also has a lot of technical background. But in doing so, a good interface becomes invisible only when you add your imagination to it. So much of what we build today just does it for us. And a book is powerful and a hammer is powerful because you're adding your own brain to it and bringing it to life. You're choosing what to do with it. It's not choosing it for you. It's why you can watch a movie that's full of action and not even remember it. You actually have to put in work to read a book. And it's good for you. It's exercising your mind in a way that's so much better than just having this fake dopamine from getting upset about a political comment that somebody wrote on Facebook that you won't remember in a week. It's hard and harder to take that time now. So how do we design calm technology? I usually give this talk to companies that are designing technology, but I'm giving it here just so that you can kind of see this perspective. First, that technology shouldn't be requiring all of our attention, just some of it, and only when necessary. When you're in a car, the car is not demanding your attention unless you don't put on your seatbelt. But the whole point about the car is to use your primary focus on the road and your secondary and tertiary attention on a foot pedal or steering or just changing gears. And the whole car is designed to just work with your primary attention. Or my favorite example, a light switch. If you're coming home drunk at night and you're really tired, you can just tap the wall and the light will turn on. Can you imagine if we designed electricity and light switches like we do for technology today? There would be an app that you would have to pair to your lighting system every time you went home. And if your batteries were out, you wouldn't be able to turn on your lights. You don't have to know anything about electricity in order to turn on a light switch. Yet you can just turn on the light switch, and in almost every country, that interface is the same. It's a universal technology. And in fact, we've actually solved a lot of technological problems already. And yet we kept going. We said, okay, a light switch, well, physical buttons are bad because Steve Jobs said that. So let's just remove that and make it a flat screen, and then we can tell Alexa to turn the lights on in our house. That is such a first world problem. Who needs to do that? Is it convenient? Yes. As long as you remember what you called that part of the lights in the house. Is it convenient? Yes, as long as the server is still running. But electricity, even in a house from 1940, you can still use the lights. Electricity is a dangerous technology, but we can just use it from the age of 4 or 5. So to create stuff that's as calm as a light switch is really important. So I have 5 minutes left. I'm going to give you a little bit more information. I talked to you about the car and how it can empower your peripheral attention. You can do this thing called synesthesia, where you can use color to actually inform people of something. So I had a light switch in my house, and it changed color, this light bulb changed color based on what the weather would be for the day. So it would be yellow if it was going to be sunny, for instance. But you don't have to tell everybody something with just this giant panel of information all the time. It can just be a light indicator. Like a record light on a camera tells you whether it's recording instead of this large interface. I'm going to skip a few more slides here. Technology can communicate, but it doesn't need to speak. This was an original art project at Xerox PARC. And the idea was that if something was going on in the company that was interesting, it would whir around and make some sounds. But people would have to figure out what people were doing with it. It was basically an analog social network. You would run around and try to figure out what was going on. The Roomba, the robotic vacuum cleaner, when it's done, it goes dun da da da, and when it's stuck, it goes dun dun. And so this is the reason why everybody likes R2-D2 more than C3PO, because C3PO might be fluent in 600,000 languages, but he's annoying in every single one of those languages. Whereas R2-D2 has a tone-based language, and that's why the Roomba is really important, because we can replace all this information with just a tone-based language. Our devices shouldn't have to speak like a human, because that's what puts us on pause. We should be speaking like humans. Our technology should be indicating something in the least amount of resolution, so it doesn't annoy us. I'm going to skip more slides, so I'm very sorry. But if good design allows you to accomplish your goals in the least amount of moves, then calm technology does the same thing, but with the least amount of mental cost. Because right now, we're supposed to be being human. We're not supposed to be sitting there with our technology all the time. Unless you want to, and that's totally okay. If you're a technology person, you should have a choice. But if you don't want to have to be, you shouldn't have to. We should have a whole spectrum of how we participate in society and how that works. So again, this Mark Weiser quote, that the scarce resource is no longer technology, it's our attention. And we need to adopt technologies that work better with our attention. And think about it before you actually just look at something. If you could do one thing today, either turn off some of the notifications on your phone or sit down and write for 20 minutes about anything you want on a piece of paper. It's physical. It will activate your brain in a different way. And then think about how your brain felt afterwards. Think about how your focus has changed. Mark Weiser died, and he wasn't around to see the future. His work got lost, and nobody cared about it. So I wrote a whole book about his work and grabbed all his original research. Then I got really angry about how microwaves and dishwashers make these annoying beeping sounds. So I wrote a book on how to design better alerts. And then finally, I saw that the research was disappearing from the web. So I archived it, put it online, and it's on calmtech.com. You can read all the original papers. They're more of technology universals that are always the same no matter what. You could read them 20 years in the future. When people say technology changes so quickly, it's not true. The classics of technology are already there. The foot pedal, the light switch, the dials, all of these things that people use in airplanes. And if we go past them and turn everything to flat screens, we're missing out on that tactile interface and the empowerment you can have just enjoying using something as a tool where you're part of it and it's part of you. Thanks.